Welcome to episode 110 of the Newtown Big Dreams podcast. Today we're talking with Joanna and James Schlosser, and they are the founders of Niche Wine Company, a family-owned winery located in West Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. The quality of their product is no accident. These award-winning wines have been handcrafted in small batches for over 8 vintages. And when they're not in the winery, Joanna is working as a brand and communications manager for Accelerate Okanagan, and James works for the British Columbia Cancer Agency, and he currently operates as a senior manager in the Technology Development Office for the BC Cancer Agency. Joanna and James are also Pinot enthusiasts. They are parents to a 5-year-old Hugh, and they are lovers of all things Okanagan. So for those of you not in this region, the Okanagan is a beautiful lake and wine country in the interior of British Columbia, which is our westernmost province in Canada, famous for great wines and increasingly prominent on the world scene of wines. So today we're going to talk to Joanna and James all about their wine business, how they got it started, and what makes the Niche Wine Company one of the best in the Okanagan. So, James, Joanna, it's great to see you today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, James, you grew up in Kelowna, but you left, and Joanna moved here in 2014. In fact, the two of you moved here together in 2014. So give us a little background. Where did you come from? How did you meet, and why did you come to Kelowna in 2014?
All right. I grew up here. I attended elementary school at Hudson Road Elementary on the west side. And then I went to Mount Bushry, and then I stayed around. And at that time, UBC Okanagan was actually a college. And I attended college there for a little while. And then I moved out, and I went to Langara in Vancouver, and then Victoria, and graduated from Victoria, University of Victoria. And then I went to winemaking school out in Ontario, and actually that's where I met Joanna. She was a friend of a friend, and she was a flight attendant for Air Canada out of Toronto. And you can take it over from there. That's the whole introduction point.
So you were attending winemaking school.
Yes.
So James was living in the Niagara region, going to Brock University to do his master's in enology and viticulture. Wow. And I was flying based out of Toronto. And a friend came to visit the two of us, and we met that way. And it wasn't long before we talked about the fact that we had a great time in Toronto, really loved it. But we always knew that BC is where we wanted to come back to. So we actually moved back to Vancouver, and we spent about 10 years in Vancouver I finished my degree, I changed jobs, James changed jobs several times, and then when we decided to have a baby, it was a pretty easy decision to make to know that Kelowna is where we wanted to be to do that.
Right. Had you vacations before 2014?
Yeah, so we actually we incorporated a small winery in West Kelowna in 2009. So we spent every second weekend on the Coquihalla from 2009 until 2014.
Wow.
So that was one of the big deciders in us moving here, as we knew adding a baby to the mix that commute time every second weekend wouldn't be possible, but also that we wanted to expand the business beyond selling to the small market we had in Vancouver, so we knew we needed to be here.
Right. So you said you finished your degree. Were you doing studies in wine as well?
No, I did my degree in communications and marketing, as it turns out, a very important part of the wine industry.
Right. So you said oenology, I think, and viticulture.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the two? I don't think I've heard the word oenology.
Okay. So oenology is the study of winemaking, and then viticulture is the study of vineyards and grapes. So my degree is on oenology and viticulture, and I took it out in Brock and St. Catharines.
Okay. So there's some overlap between the two subjects.
Yeah. You have to know. We did a curriculum of the actual vineyard stuff, and some of us all went in. Anybody that graduated from that, some of us specialize now in vineyards, and then some of us went and decided, we'll spend more time in the winery. So a lot of us are winemakers rather than vineyard managers and that kind of stuff. But they give you a course on both when you
I see.
Yeah.
And did you always love wine? Was it something you...
Yeah, so when I was at UVic, I actually thought I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then we had to spend a night out in the ocean along the tides with what are they? They're little squares, and you had to count all the little organisms in it, and it was freezing cold, so I didn't like that much. And then once I graduated, I came home and I worked at my parents' vineyard for a little while, and then just at that time, Brock was starting up, so I was actually the second graduating class through Brock University, which is now on, I don't know how many people they've got through that program now. So I was, talked to my parents and flew out to Ontario and spent 7 years out there. I did my master's there as well. So, so it was great. And then we decided, I've always preferred British Columbia, and I have a family farm here, and so we decided come back again. And I worked at actually UBC Wine Research Center for a while we were down in Vancouver, and then we decided, the winery's doing well enough, and we had a little baby, and it was tough making a living that you could afford another bedroom down in Vancouver. So we thought the world's just kind of aligned, and in 2014 we decided to move back again.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you didn't, I guess, have any experience with winemaking, like being on the freezing cold ocean where you were like, this sucks, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, I was, but then little do you realize that winemaking is actually freezing cold as well.
Right.
So, it's still in October when you're outside doing all the pressure washing and cleaning and stuff like that. So you never escape the cold, but it's a little more fun, I would say, for sure.
James's dad read a book in the, I'm going to say early 90s called The Heartbreak Grape.
Right.
And that's what inspired the planting of the first few rows of vineyard on your family farm. So I would say everybody went into it with eyes kind of wide open. That it can be heartbreaking. Yeah.
Right. That tell us about that book, The Heartbreak Grape.
It's essentially all about Pinot Noir and how difficult it is to grow and how difficult it is to make the wine. Am I doing it justice there, James?
Yeah, and how difficult it is to start a vineyard. It's out of California, about a guy in California that fell in love with Pinot Noir and grew this vineyard. And I've actually never read the book, so I don't know. But my understanding is that he goes through all these trials and tribulations about growing Pinot Noir in California in this place, like trying to find water and all those great sort of things. A lot of things we struggle with here in the Okanagan now. So,
tell us about some of the challenges. What is so difficult about it? Because for us consumers, we see the glamour, we see the finished bottle, we enjoy it.
Yeah.
I mean, I spent a little time in food production, and it's amazing how much work goes into preparing our food, even before we prepare it. I mean, people think, steak comes from a cellophane tree or something.
Right.
There's so much work, but tell us some of the challenges and difficult parts of the wine.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, like right now it's pruning season, right? So you're outside pruning vine after vine after vine, and it's cold outside. And so it's not easy work, and it's very physical work. And then, you get to the growing season, and our first vintage actually was probably the worst vintage we ever had. So it was a really cool growing season, and so we're quite high in elevation where our vineyard is. We were kind of biting our nails getting down to the final few weeks of October, hoping that they were going to make the maturity that we needed for them to be a good bottle of wine. And we got there, but I mean, it's stressful when things aren't going as easy as you want it to go. Yeah. And then, certain varieties are more prone to, you can kind of beat them up a little bit and they don't show signs of stress or anything like that. Whereas Pinot Noir, like Joanna was saying, is it's a thin, delicate wine, so you have to be careful with everything. It really shows everything that you do to it throughout the process. So,
and everything that you don't do.
And everything you don't do. So, so I mean, some of them are harder to make than others. And then, I mean, right now we're looking around for another vineyard, and the Okanagan has become a popular place to live. So, the prices of small acreages here in the Okanagan are very expensive, and so the math doesn't always work out. If you want to produce a bottle of wine that doesn't cost $50 to $60, you want to keep it down in the $20 to $30 range where we like to drink our wines, then so there's challenges with that as well.
And then from the sales and marketing side, I mean, if you think about what was happening even 10 years ago here, how many vineyards and wineries there were versus what there is today, it's an amazing industry to be a part of. It's very collaborative, but the reality is there's only so much shelf space. There's only so many wine lists and restaurants that you can be on. So trying to come up with what your differentiating factors are when essentially everybody's growing grapes and making wine. So trying to find what makes us unique and trying to communicate that to the world can also be a bit of a challenge.
Right. And there's only so much we can drink. We're trying.
Yeah. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. And so tell us about Niche Wine Company. So when did you get the concept for it? When did you start it? And then tell us a little bit about some of the unique features.
Yeah, so my parents, so I grew up on that property, so my parents have owned it.
Where is it?
So it's in West Kelowna. If you're driving along the highway, there's Bylands Nursery. If you look way up into the mountains up there, it's we're the only, there's actually one other vineyard up there, my next door neighbor, who is Annabelle and Grant Stanley, so he's the actual winemaker for Spearhead right now. So they have a little plot of Pinot Noir up there as well. I think they're about 2 acres, and then there's us, and my parents own over 20 acres, but about 7 of it is planted to grapes right now. So we're quite high up. It's perfectly south facing. It's a beautiful spot, but it's high up in altitude. So we're up over 600 meters. So we're one of the highest vineyards in the Okanagan, which is great for growing, really delicate aromatic wines like Gewürztraminer, which we grow a lot of and Riesling. And then it's really great for Pinot Noir as well, because you want it to be a little bit, more on the acidic side of things rather than losing all that bright acidity that it kind of is known for Pinot Noir. So I mean, that's unique about us, is that we're the only vineyard up there and we're quite high in altitude. My parents planted all those grapes with families, other family friends and all those sorts of things. So
and they started with 6 small plots because originally they weren't sure, what is going to grow there. It's
parents.
Like every if you think about most of the wine areas here, even looking at Grey Monk, way back then, a lot of people said, like, that's a crazy place to grow grapes. It's too far north. You can't grow grapes there. And now look at what they've done. It's pretty amazing. So when James's parents first started, they planted a few different varietals just to see, which ones were going to work and which ones were going to make great wine, and then go from there. So we kind of did it in a couple of different phases, and then chose the 2 that we thought were doing the best, which was the Pinot Noir and the Gewürztraminer, and planted an additional
vineyard up top,
5 acres up above.
Yeah. Okay. So
and then
7 acres is planted out of 20. Can you expand that?
Yeah, there's probably about another 2 acres, but it's it's really rocky up there. There's a lot of bedrock that kind of pops up here and there. So
really challenging.
Yeah, so we're about done planting up there, and that's why Joanna and I are looking for another location where we'll put our own vineyard and then do that kind of stuff, and still obviously work with my parents up in the spot that we're in now. But
do you have a good realtor helping you?
Yes, we do. Yes. Okay. Kathleen Stagg is helping us look around.
Great. She's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then we started. We called it Niche was because we were up there and we spent a lot of time in the vineyard ourselves, and we noticed there was a lot of. Like at night, when the sun's going down, there's a lot of dragonflies and everything flying around. It's got its own ecosystem, and when we were younger, there was just sagebrush and a lot of knapweed and stuff like that before my parents started to plant the vineyards. And then we noticed as soon as we put the vineyards in, you started seeing a lot of quail show up, a lot of dragonflies, a lot of these different kind of ecosystems start to grow up around the ecosystem we were creating. And then a niche is an ecosystem, so that's why we named it Niche Wine Company.
So how do you deal with things like dragonflies and quail? Like, they eat the grapes?
No, it's just like with the water and the cover, so the hawks can't get everything, and there's more bugs in the sky for the dragonflies are obviously eating some sort of gnat or something that's flying around up there now. So it all of a sudden you just see when you put a vineyard in, there's all these other, birds and bugs and all sorts of stuff that like that environment. So they start to come, and you build up this nice little ecosystem around your vineyard. So
are there creatures that eat the grapes or?
Oh yeah, there's lots of birds and stuff that like to do that as well. But so we have like all these bird calling machines and everything up there that try to keep out those guys when they start to mature. But once they start picking up the sugar and the acid start dropping out, that's when all those guys come in. We've got a big deer fence around it, and we have to electrify it because we got lots of bears up there. So
in fact, the very first vintage of Niche, 2010, as it got that, like James said, it was the worst year on record. On top of that, 2 small cubs got into the Chardonnay block and ate
all of it. Pretty much all of it.
2 tons of grapes in 2 nights.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they do this really nice thing where they just clean the stems. So they leave you kind of the remnants of what could have been.
Yeah. And just suck them all off the stems still there.
It's like a cartoon.
Yeah. So I guess for them it's like a big dessert.
Yes. They love it. Yes.
Yeah. And that must have been disappointing.
It was. Yeah. I mean, those are the challenges, right? Yeah.
So most of that's solved, and you're looking to expand.
Yeah.
So are you selling house every year?
Oh yeah, we're pretty much selling out every year. Things are going really well actually. So yeah, we're looking around for another place. It's just now we're trying to find a place that up there it's quite remote. It's a dirt road. It's a gravel road. It's we've got a lot of potholes. So it's not the best place for the public to come up unless they have big pickup trucks and stuff like that. So we're looking for another vineyard that's in a good growing location, but also is maybe more accessible to the public.
So you can have tastings.
The tasting room. Yeah, we're not open to the public. You can come up and make an appointment, but we don't have a tasting room or any of those sorts of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you say, Joanna, that the market has grown in the Okanagan? So you mentioned 10 years ago. I'm 8 years in Kelowna now.
Oh, okay.
So are there more vineyards? Is there more being produced?
Substantially more. Our agent Philippe loves to use this line. He says wineries are like mushrooms. They're just popping up everywhere.
Right.
And I think if I think back, these aren't exact numbers, but I remember when we first started there being just over 100, and I think they're pushing the 300 mark now. That's all through BC. So there's the island and the Lower Mainland. There are wineries there, but obviously the Okanagan is dominating in terms of the amount of acres planted. So there is a lot happening.
Is it sustainable? Because in most businesses, not every business is going to survive. And like real estate, for example, sometimes when a city is really hot and you get a lot of people trying to build, it's kind of like a gold rush, and then you end up having a recession because too many people were building too fast. So 300 versus 100, is it all being sold? Or
I think the reality is that we say 300 wineries, but we make 1,000 cases of wine, which is laughable to someone like Mission Hill. Their volumes are. Can you give an example, James? What kind of volume are they?
I don't know what they're at, but I think Sandra Oldfield said Tinhorn was at 40,000 when she left there. So
cases, when you talk about 1,000 cases versus 40,000, and there's actually quite a few small boutique family-run wineries that are selling that 1,000 cases of wine. So for us, a long-term plan would be to open a wine shop and be able to sell through our farm door to people in our community. So I think that there's always going to be a demand for that kind of locally handmade, when the people behind the product. And then, of course, there's room for the big guys, too, because, there's
a lot of people that do it. We both have other jobs, right? So farming historically has been a profession that people tend to, at least one of the person in a couple would have another job. So they'd be a teacher or a nurse or something like that. And we're no exception to that. So Joanna works at Accelerate Okanagan, and I work at the Cancer Agency here. So you do all these sorts of things, in addition to those things to make it sustainable, right?
So that's a lot of hours.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, yeah.
So you said you're pruning right now, but I guess in the winter, is there any time that you get off?
Oh yeah, we take a couple of weeks of holidays here and there. Yeah, but you just kind of slot them in where things kind of slow down, right? So right around November, things start to slow down in the winery. You can get things barreled down. You can get everything topped up, and then you can kind of take a break from the winery for a little while, and also from the vineyard, you can go away for a couple of weeks in there, and then you got to come back depending on how many acres you have. I mean, if you're pruning it all yourself and you have 40 acres, then you're not going to have any downtown, right? You're going to go right out of winemaking season right into pruning your own vineyards, right? But
so is it fair to say that 7 acres produces about 1,000 cases?
That's about right. Yep.
Yeah. And tell us about some of your wines. Which varietals do you have?
So we have Pinot Noir, we have Gewürztraminer, we have Riesling, we have a little bit of Chardonnay, we have a little bit of Pinot Blanc, we have some Marshall Foch, which is a hybrid, a tiny little bit of Bacco. Am I missing something?
Well, we just released a Bubbles. This is our first year that we've done that, which is pretty exciting for us. So we worked with the company out of Penticton called Artis. They have some pretty fancy equipment. That one we are sold out of, but was a really fun project that we're planning to do again this year. So that one's called the Small Batch Bubbles. Another kind of flagship wine for us is the Pinot Noir. We do Pinot 3 different ways. So we have a Pinot Noir Blanc. So it's a white wine made out of red grapes. So almost a rosé color, has that kind of very, very light pink hue to it, and a really nice kind of warm mouthfeel. So it's like something fun and unique and interesting, and pairs really well with a lot of different foods. So fun one. And then we have our Pinot Noir, just our regular old Pinot Noir that we love. And this year we also did something new. We did a Pinot Noir Reserve, which means for us what it meant was spent a little bit more time in the barrel than what we would usually do, which is like about 11 months. Okay. So this spent about 16 months in French oak. And
what does that do? How does that affect the taste if you
so it's a little bit, it ages longer. So as your wine's sitting in a barrel, it's evaporating alcohol through the staves and concentrating down and picking up more of the the oak characteristics, so vanilla and those sorts of things. Okay. And then also we went through all our barrels before we bottled our regular Pinot Noir, and we picked out the ones that we liked the best, and that's what went into our reserve. So not only did we hold them longer, they were also the barrels that we actually preferred out of all of them.
Mm-hmm. He says we, but it was the winemaker's choice. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But you sample it.
Oh yeah,
if there's something that you find, super excellent, you're going to say so.
Yeah, so every single time we go through and we top them up, so as it's evaporating the alcohol out of it, they drop down, so you always have to fill them back up again. When we do that, we go through and we taste them every single time just to see how they're kind of progressing along as they age in that oak. So, yeah.
Very cool.
My parents run the vineyard side of things.
Right.
Yeah.
So 2009, you start the company. Yep. And when were your first bottles?
2010.
2010?
Yeah.
And so what's it like trying to sell a brand new bottle of wine?
Hard.
No one's
It's a bit unnerving. I think a big thing about selling is, especially for us, we put our heart and soul into what we created. Everything from going through the process of picking the grapes, crushing the grapes, getting the wine the way that James wanted it to be, getting it in the bottle, making sure the package is right, and then there you are standing with your heart on the table to someone in a wine shop hoping they're gonna love it. Mm-hmm. So there's been lots of ups and downs trying to create space in the market for our small brand and create relationships with people in Vancouver and in the Okanagan, and really just to help them get a sense of who we are. And then also time, they've learned to trust that over time, vintage over vintage, we're producing good quality wines, and things like winning awards and that kind of thing, like that, that all helps a lot.
Definitely
too.
helps.
Yeah.
So is it you and James going to different stores? Or in 2010, was that how
it was? It was mostly me. Because we were living in Vancouver, we were stretched pretty thin to begin with. So what would happen is he would go back and forth a lot more than I would to be making the wine, filtering the wine, all the things that needed to happen in the Okanagan. And then I was able to, on my weekends and after work and that kind of thing, I worked at Lululemon in branding and marketing for about 5 years. So that Kitsilano area, I got really... I got in with a lot of the wine shop owners and restaurants there because it was easy to go after work and kind of give them a taste of what we were up to. And then it just kind of slowly grew from there. And of course, like any startup, our friends and family have been huge supporters. And I like to joke that James's mom and my mom are our number one clients. I think that'll always be the case. But between the friends and family and then the community that we built in Vancouver, that was enough at that time to support what was 300 cases of wine. And so we've kind of organically grown over that time. And so vintage over vintage, we're continuing to sell out and continuing to kind of widen the funnel in terms of who we're introducing ourselves to.
And you really see the restaurants, there's a lot of restaurants out there that, they say that they're supporting small local wineries and those sorts of things. And some of them are actual reality, like Forage is being one of our biggest supporters. Like they've had our wines on their list ever since we started. So like they take a true interest in like the people that are making the product and bringing it out to them. So
it's just about us finding those people that care about that. And in Kelowna, we're so lucky because, I mean, there isn't anybody that doesn't care about that here. So if we talk about Luigi's restaurants, like the Perch and the Curious and La Bussola, we've been on his list for quite some time. And Crafty Kitchen is another great one for us. Rods is a huge supporter of what we're doing. So we're really lucky that way.
Yeah, very cool. So are you distributing it too? Like, I'm just trying to picture how the business works. So Rods calls you, says, bring us 2 cases, and then you drive it over? Or do you have a distributor?
So before we had a baby, we were the delivery man and the finance person and the dishwasher and the works.
Right.
But this kind of introduced a new level of complication. So now we work with some sales agents in Vancouver, mostly friends and family, and then a sales agent here in Kelowna. And then we work with a company called Direct Tap, which has an office and warehouse in Summerland. And they do most of our delivering for us. Right. And then we recently just launched a new website. So we have a wine club, so a wine direct to consumer. That's the only time that really we would maybe be doing deliveries is for that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And interacting with people at shows like the one that we met at. So you're still trying to be in front of the public.
You would never go. It never goes away. You're always doing that. Like, I mean, even like Fitz. I mean, how long has Cedar Creek been in business? I mean, forever, right? So, he's still out there now with Fitz, out there pouring wine himself and doing all that kind of stuff, right? So Gordon Fitzpatrick. So I don't think that's something you ever get away with. You always have to be out there meeting the public, talking about your product, talking about your brand, what you're up to. Otherwise, I think you become obsolete pretty quickly. So,
and especially for us because we don't have a tasting room. So being able to go to Save-On and do a tasting or to be at one of the liquor stores or at the events like the one we met at, it's a huge opportunity for us to talk to people directly that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Right.
Well, you also see trends in the market, right? So like a lot of people, like right now, it seems people are preferring drier wines. And if you weren't, as a winemaker, if I'm not out there pouring my wines, I'm going to lose touch with what the general public wants, right? So it's important to get that feedback.
Yeah.
We were joking yesterday about sommeliers and some of the trends in wine and talking about how orange wine has been like this kind of trend. But if we weren't out in the world seeing what's actually being purchased and talking to people, we might think, hey, like let's make a huge amount of orange wine. But we know that like most of our friends, most of the consumers that we know, it's a fun thing to try, but not something they're buying every day.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you make a wine sweeter or drier? How does that happen?
So when the grapes come in, they have a certain level of sugar in them, and then you ferment them, and you can stop that ferment whenever you want. So you monitor that ferment as long as it's going along. You keep measuring how much residual sugar is left in there, and then at some point you decide, okay, well that's balanced for me. I want to stop it at that point. So and you can stop it from super sweet all the way down to dryness. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell us about your website because I don't know if you know, but with podcasts now, I can put a link. So if someone's on the treadmill or if they're driving, they can just tap on that. They don't have to try to write something down.
Oh, great.
When they're running or driving.
Okay.
So we'll put all the links you want into the show notes.
Oh, great.
And then your listeners can
Sure.
check it
okay.
out.
So you can find us at www.nichewinecompany.com.
Great. Excellent. Are you on Instagram?
We sure are. It's at Niche Wine Co.
Great. I'd love to get a picture with you guys, and we'll put it on Instagram.
Oh, sure. I can send that. No problem.
I've got a selfie stick that's also a tripod, so we can kind of bunch in here.
Okay.
So that's great. Was there anything else you wanted to cover? Because I covered all my questions, and I'll edit this redundancy here.
Right.
Okay.
But if there's anything else, let me know and I can
that we should talk
pose
about?
that as a question.
Yeah. We talked about the wine club and the website and the farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You plug that we're looking for a farm.
And Kathleen Stang is your realtor.
So we actually were working with Jerry Game.
Yeah.
And Kathleen was working for him.
Yeah.
And then how all the laws changed, I'm not really sure. So we kind of work with Jerry and Kathleen is how it works, but I don't know.
We're confused. We don't understand how
it's all going to go.
But
yeah.
She's a great person, and I know of a parcel, so I'm going to send it to her.
Oh, okay.
So
Perfect.
she can send it to you.
Okay, perfect.
But yeah, she's a great person, and I was in the same office with her for almost 2 years, and I switched companies now.
Yeah, very nice lady. Yeah, she'd be very patient because it's not an easy process trying to find what is going to be your next forever place, right? So
exactly.
Well, we definitely see there's a pendulum swing that keeps happening with location and then size, and then as it's this property search, but our business model is attached to it, so it's a bit more complicated than an average house buy. We really have appreciated her, tootling around the Okanagan with us.
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
It takes time.
Yeah.
So who would you like to nominate to come on the show? Anyone connected to Kelowna? Someone that you would love to hear being interviewed by me in the future?
Deanna Kent and Neil Houston. They're a couple, and they are just completed the third book in a series of books that they have a contract with Random House.
Oh, wow.
So they both used to work with Disney Interactive. Now Neil works for Yeti Farm Creative, or does cartoons. So he's the creative in terms of all of the visual and illustration. And then Deanna is a writer, and now she works with a bunch of different tech firms in town. But they've been very successful, and they had a book launch at the Innovation Center. It's been picked up internationally now. So, and it's kind of a young adult fiction kind of stuff. So it's just amazing. They're so talented and really it's really exciting for Kelowna.
And they co-write these
do.
books.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
And they also have a really cool story of that the original idea was actually rejected a lot of times, and like what it took to get to where they are now is pretty amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And it's great to see you.
Yeah,
you as well.
Thanks for promoting Kelowna.
Yeah.
Luke Mankus is a realtor. He loves what he does. We asked Luke if he had any regrets about moving here in 2011, and he always says, yeah, one regret, and that is he didn't move here sooner. When Luke came here, he didn't know anyone. He didn't know the neighborhoods or anything or anyone besides his daughter, who was 6 years old at the time. So he knows what it's like. Now, he's an expert and has helped well over 100 single people, couples, families, and investors with their real estate needs in the Okanagan. If you're new to our beautiful city, Luke can help you get connected with great lawyers, dentists, carpenters, landscapers, swimming pool installers, you name it. And whether you're new to Kelowna or not, Luke knows real estate. He can help you find a great property, negotiate a good deal, and hold your hand all the way through the process until the day you get your shiny new set of keys. Luke is known as a no-pressure kind of guy. He's had clients where it took even a year or more to get them into a property. He just doesn't believe in rushing things. On the other hand, when you decide it's time to act, he's diligent, and he'll work day and night until the job is done. Give Luke Mankus a call or a text message at any time, 778-215-4273. Again, that's 778-215-4273. 778-215-4273 to chat with Luke about real estate.